My name is Leo Hayes, and a moment ago, the happiest moment of my life was shattered like a pane of glass. The champagne tower on the hotel's rooftop terrace glittered under the city lights. The cheers of our friends were still echoing in the air. I could still feel the cool slip of the diamond ring as I placed it on her finger. Chloe Anderson, my girlfriend of 3 years, the woman I'd put on a pedestal, had just said, "I do," with tears of joy in her eyes. The next second, the phone in my pocket vibrated. On some kind of twisted impulse, I pulled it out. It was an iMessage from Chloe. 3 words, followed by a cold, clinical period. "We're done." My head snapped up. It felt like an invisible hand had reached into my chest, ripped out my heart, and packed the empty space with crushed ice. It wasn't pain. It was a profound, absurd numbness. Across the terrace, the same woman who had been weeping with emotion was now standing at the railing, her back to the party. The evening breeze billowed her white dress, her silhouette looking fragile and yet utterly final. It was as if the person who had just agreed to marry me was a figment of my imagination. "Leo? Dude, you good? Cat got your tongue." A friend slung an arm around my shoulders, shoving a glass of champagne into my hand. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt like it was packed with sand. Not a sound came out. I could only stare at Chloe's back, praying she would turn around and tell me this was some kind of sick joke. She didn't. She even shifted her weight slightly, a minuscule movement that perfectly dodged my desperate attempt to catch her eye. In that instant, I knew. This wasn't a joke. At the absolute peak of my life, in the moment I had laid my entire heart and all my future plans bare, I was being publicly executed by the person I loved and trusted most. The cheers, the fizzing champagne, the smiling faces of my friends. It all faded into a slow-motion silent film, and I was standing in the middle of it all, a clown who didn't belong. How could she? How dare she? I pushed through the crowd, stumbling toward her like a zombie. I had no why. Right here. Right now. But just as I was about to touch her, it was as if she had eyes in the back of her head. She took one decisive step forward and vanished into the dim shadows of the hallway leading back into the hotel. She wouldn't even give me the dignity of an explanation. All that was left for me and this farce of an engagement party was the cold, final judgment on my phone screen and the surrounding crowd's expressions slowly shifting from celebration to confusion and finally to pity and whispers. My world, at its highest point, had imploded, leaving nothing behind but dust. I don't know how I left the hotel. When I came to, I was standing on a cold, deserted street late at night. The diamond ring box in my pocket, meant to be a symbol of our future, now felt like a stone digging painfully into my leg. God, it was cold. I squatted down on the curb, buried my face in my hands, and felt like a piece of trash abandoned by the entire world. Just then, a pair of familiar, slightly worn but impeccably clean white sneakers stopped in front of me. I looked up. It was Maya Reed, my childhood best friend. She didn't say anything. She just quietly squatted down beside me and handed me a tissue that smelled faintly of lavender. The halo of a streetlight traced the line of her jaw. Her eyes were a complex fog of emotions. There was clear sympathy, a sigh of "I knew it," and something else I couldn't decipher, a focus so deep it was bottomless. "Leo." Her voice was a whisper, brushing against the raw edges of my heart like a feather. "Let me take you home." I nodded, a puppet on a string. She struggled a little to help me up. As I stood, a wave of dizziness made me sway, and she instinctively reached out, her hand clamping onto my arm to steady me. It wasn't a normal supportive gesture. Her fingers dug into my forearm, her nails nearly breaking the skin, with a possessive, almost frantic strength that screamed, "You will not get away." I flinched in pain and looked at her, startled. She immediately let go, a flicker of panic in her eyes that was instantly replaced by a deeper concern, so fast I thought I'd imagined it. "Oh, sorry," she stammered, looking down. Her voice returned to its usual softness. "Did I hurt you? Let's go home." Home? What home? The home Chloe and I had built? All that was left there now was probably the wreckage of her hasty departure. But looking at this girl I'd grown up with, at the genuine worry in her eyes, a shameful, tiny wisp of warmth crept into my cold, empty heart. Maybe there was at least one person in this world who actually cared about me. The thought had barely formed before it sent a chill down my spine. Maya dropped me off at the entrance to the apartment building I share with Chloe. "Do you want me to come up with you?" she asked softly, her eyes searching mine. I shook my head. Right now, all I wanted was to crawl into a hole and be alone. "No, I'm good. Thanks." She didn't push. "Call me if you need anything. My phone won't be on silent." I made my way upstairs on autopilot. The key slid into the lock. The door swung open. A blast of cold, stale air hit me in the face. My heart sank. In the entryway, the pair of limited edition Louboutins I'd saved up to buy her, the ones she treated like precious artifacts, were gone. In the living room, the expensive aromatherapy diffuser she always said was the only thing that could help her relax was gone. I drifted into the bedroom like a ghost. The closet door was wide open. The side that used to be a vibrant collection of her dresses was now a barren, empty space. On her vanity, all the bottles and jars had vanished, leaving behind only a fine dusting of spilled setting powder, the last trace of her presence. She had moved out so quickly, so completely, it was like she had taken a giant eraser and scrubbed herself from my life. Only the framed photo on the nightstand remained. It was from our trip to the coast just last week. In the picture, her smile was so sweet, her body pressed tightly against mine as if I was her entire world. Ironic. What a goddamn monumental irony. I snatched the frame and hurled it against the wall. The glass shattered just like my heart. The photo slid out from the wreckage, her smiling face still mocking me. I collapsed onto the cold floor, my back against the bed, as a tidal wave of emptiness and absurdity washed over me. I just didn't understand. How could someone fake it so well? All that affection, all those conversations about our future, was it all an act? I couldn't accept it. I pulled out my phone and frantically dialed Chloe's number. "The person you're trying to reach is unavailable." Once, twice, 10 times. Always the same robotic voice. She blocked me. I called her best friend, Vanessa. She actually picked up. "Vanessa, it's Leo. Chloe." She was silent for a few seconds, her tone shifting to one of deliberate distance. "Leo, Chloe said she's just tired. She needs some time alone. You should probably just let her be." "Tired? Time alone?" I almost laughed. "We just got engaged, and you're telling me she's tired?" "Relationships are complicated." She mumbled a vague excuse and hung up. Every door was slammed in my face. Every attempt to find an answer was like punching a pillow. It did nothing but make the confusion and betrayal coil tighter around my chest, suffocating me. The next day, my eyes shot with blood, I went straight to Chloe's office building. The receptionist stopped me with polite, corporate precision. "I'm sorry, sir, but Ms. Anderson has taken a leave of absence. We don't have a date for her return." "I have an emergency. I need to see her." "I apologize, but we cannot disclose employee information." I felt the eyes of the office workers around me, their gazes a mixture of curiosity and pity. I was a spectacle, a clown putting his humiliation on public display. My dignity was being ground into the polished marble floor. I stumbled back to that cold apartment building, too drained to even go upstairs. I dropped onto the edge of a planter, grabbed my hair, and buried my face in my knees. The world was so big, yet there was no place for me. The feeling of being utterly abandoned was about to swallow me whole. And then, once again, a pair of familiar white sneakers entered my downcast line of sight. I looked up. It was Maya. She was holding a grocery bag filled with fresh vegetables and meat. Her forehead was beaded with sweat, and she was slightly out of breath, as if she'd rushed to get here. I figured you hadn't eaten, so I bought some groceries. Thought I'd make you dinner." She squatted down to my level, her eyes overflowing with a sympathy so palpable it hurt. "Judging by your face, I'm guessing the apartment is empty." A lump formed in my throat. I nodded. She sighed, didn't press for details, and just reached out to gently brush a speck of dirt off my shoulder. Her touch was light, carrying a strange, soothing power. "Come on, Leo," she said, holding out her hand. Her voice was firm but gentle. "Let's get you to your parents' place for a few days. This apartment, too many memories. It's not good for you." I looked at the hand she offered, pale, clean. After the cold shoulder from Chloe and the rest of the world, this undisguised kindness felt like the only light in the darkness. On a strange impulse, I took her hand. She flinched for a second, then squeezed back, her grip so tight it almost hurt. But the smile that broke across her face was like the sun after a storm, instantly chasing away some of the gloom that had settled over my heart. She drove me to my parents' house. We didn't talk much on the way. She just quietly turned down the music and occasionally glanced at me in the rearview mirror. When we got there, I stepped out of the car and thanked her. "Don't be a stranger," she said with a small smile, handing me a thermos from the passenger seat. "I made some chicken noodle soup on the way. You haven't eaten all day. You need to have something, or you'll get sick." I took the thermos, still warm to the touch. That frozen place inside me seemed to thaw just a little bit more. I turned and walked toward the building. Just as the automatic door was about to swing shut, for some reason, I glanced back. Maya's car was still there. She hadn't left. She was sitting in the driver's seat, both hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. Her head was bowed, and her shoulders were shaking in tiny, rhythmic jolts. Was she crying? Why? Because she was sad to see me in so much pain? The realization struck me with a gentle force, a feeling that was bittersweet, but also undeniably warming. It was the feeling of being cared for. I turned back and stepped into the elevator. The warmth of the thermos seeped through my palm, slowly spreading through my numb and frozen body. Maybe, in this god-awful world, there was still one person at least who was shedding real tears for me. 3. I spent 3 days at my parents' house in a fog. I was an empty shell, a ghost haunting my childhood bedroom, with no interest in anything. The only constant was Maya, who showed up every day like clockwork with food. She'd quietly clean my room or sometimes just sit by my bed, keeping me company in silence. She never mentioned Chloe, never asked how I was feeling. She just filled the suffocating vacuum around me with her presence. On the 4th morning, the sunlight was annoyingly bright. I managed to drag myself out of bed and open up my dusty old laptop. On a whim, I logged into a burner account for my high school's private Facebook group, an account I'd made years ago to rig some class poll and hadn't touched since. The group was blowing up with notifications. Everyone was talking about a huge upcoming wedding, and the names of the bride and groom stabbed me in the eyes like 2 red-hot daggers. Bride, Chloe Anderson. Groom, Chadwick Chad Prescott III, the son of a real estate mogul, notorious around the city for changing girlfriends more often than he changed his designer shirts. The date stamp on their engagement photos, which they had just posted, was from the week before I proposed. The comments kept rolling in. "OMG, Chloe's marrying a Prescott. Level up. Congrats. Heard she dumped that long-term boyfriend she'd been with for years. I mean, what's love got to do with a billion-dollar trust fund? Am I right? A proposal? Yikes. Guess he was just the backup plan. Poor guy." Boom. Something inside my head exploded. All the confusion, the pain, the self-doubt of the past few days instantly found its answer. It wasn't that she was tired. It wasn't that we'd grown apart. It was a premeditated, social climbing betrayal. I'd been played for a fool, dancing around in her carefully constructed lie, acting out the final scene of the devoted boyfriend, thinking I was the star of the show. The rage that had been simmering in my chest for days, mixed with the humiliation of being played for a chump, erupted. Blood rushed to my head with a deafening roar. My fingers trembled with an uncontrollable fury. I went on a screenshotting frenzy, capturing every catty comment, every damning photo with its timestamp, and blasted it all to Chloe via text. This time, she didn't ghost me. Her call came through almost immediately. I took a deep breath and hit accept. "Leo? You? How did you find out? Let me explain." Her voice was no longer cold and distant. It was laced with panic. "It's not what you think. Chad and I were an arrangement. My family. I had no choice. My feelings for you were real." "Real feelings?" I let out a cold, harsh laugh. The sound was so raw, I barely recognized my own voice. "The kind of real feelings that have you taking engagement photos with another man a week before I propose? What did you take me for, Chloe? A stepping stone on your path to the 1%? A backup plan to prove you still got it? No, that's not it. You have to believe me." She started sobbing on the other end of the line. Listening to her fake tears, the last shred of affection I had for her disintegrated, leaving only disgust and a perverse sense of satisfaction. It felt good, tearing down her perfect facade, watching her squirm. It felt so damn good. Just as I was about to unleash the most vicious words I could think of, a warm hand gently covered my own, which was clenched around my phone, veins bulging. I whipped my head around. Maya was standing behind me. She must have just arrived, a bag with breakfast still in her hand. She didn't look at me. Her gaze was fixed on the damning conversation on my phone screen. Her brow furrowed slightly, but her expression wasn't one of surprise. It was knowing, calm, and tinged with a subtle, deep-seated pain. "Leo," she said, her voice soft but carrying a strange, anchoring weight. "Stop." She reached out with her other hand, not to snatch the phone, but to take it from me with an undeniable gentleness. I instinctively resisted, but she pressed the end call button and placed the phone face down on the desk. Chloe's crying and pleading cut off abruptly. The room fell silent, filled only with the sound of my own ragged breathing. "She's not worth your anger," Maya said, looking up at me, her eyes clear and steady. "Every word you say to her just dirties your own soul." She placed a breakfast on the desk, a thermos of hot coffee and a couple of warm croissants. "Eat something first. Starving yourself over someone who never loved you is the real loss here." I stared at her. The tidal wave of rage and destructive energy inside me began to recede, calmed by her quiet gaze and simple words. She was right. What was there left to say to Chloe? Every argument, every accusation was meaningless from the moment she chose to deceive me. My revenge just now only made me look more pathetic. A profound exhaustion washed over me. I sank into the chair, looking at the steaming thermos on the desk. When I had been betrayed by the world, at my most furious, my most unhinged, it was Maya who had pulled me back from the brink. She didn't mock my meltdown or fuel my anger. She just used the simplest words to remind me of what was truly important, myself. "Maya!" I started, my throat dry. "Yeah." She looked at me, her gaze soft. "Thank you." 1,000 emotions were packed into those 2 words. She gave a small, gentle smile. "Eat up. They're best when they're warm." I looked down, picked up a croissant, and took a bite. The warm, buttery pastry seemed to send a little bit of life back into my cold, numb limbs. In the wreckage of my life, at least one person was still here by my side. That realization was like a drug, a lethal temptation that, in my desperation, I couldn't resist reaching for. For Maya's kiss was like a branding iron, searing, shocking me into a state of simultaneous clarity and chaos. I recoiled, my back hitting the car's headrest with a thud as I stared at her in disbelief. In the dim light of the car's interior, her cheeks were flushed, her breathing ragged. The eyes that were usually filled with gentle sympathy were now burning with a light I'd never seen before. Something wild, almost feral. It was a mixture of shyness and fear, but beneath it all was the desperate, obsessive need to possess. "Maya, what are you?" My throat tightened. My mind went blank. "Leo." She cut me off, her voice husky but unyielding, laced with a trembling vulnerability. "She doesn't want you." "I do." She took a deep breath, as if summoning every ounce of courage she had. "I've waited for you for so many years," she said, each word deliberate. "Watching you have eyes only for her. Watching you be happy for her, be miserable because of her. I can't wait anymore." Boom. Her words were a thunderclap in the confines of the car. So many years? Waited? Flashes of her quiet companionship replayed in my mind. Every meal she'd brought, every time she'd shown up at just the right moment, all the subtle, meticulous care. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't just the bond of childhood friends. It had all been laced with a meaning so heavy it was suffocating. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Shock, confusion, even a flicker of anger at being deceived warred within me. But stronger than all of it was a shameful sense of relief, like a drowning man clinging to a piece of driftwood. Just as I'd been thrown away like trash by Chloe, my dignity destroyed, my self-worth in ruins, another girl was telling me, in the most absolute terms, that she treasured me, that she had waited years for me. The feeling of being so intensely desired, so fiercely needed, was a powerful anesthetic, instantly numbing the raw, gaping wounds in my soul. It was a temptation, a blatant, intoxicating poison that I knew I shouldn't touch, but desperately wanted to taste. Seeing that I didn't immediately push her away or yell at her, the wildness in Maya's eyes softened, replaced by a fragile, watery vulnerability. She tugged gently at the sleeve of my jacket, a gesture reminiscent of when we were kids. Her voice broke, thick with unshed tears. "Leo, please don't push me away. Please? I know this is wrong, but I can't help it. I know you better than anyone. I'll be better to you than anyone. I'll take care of you. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." A tear escaped, rolling down her cheek and landing on the back of my hand. It was scalding hot. Seeing her like this, my flicker of anger vanished completely. In its place was a complex mess of pity, sympathy, and profound confusion. Was she just a lost girl who loved too much, who had been driven to extremes? What was I supposed to do? Shove her away? Tell her this was insane? And then go back to that cold, empty apartment filled with memories of betrayal and continue to face this rotten world alone? Or could I accept this heavy, unfamiliar, but undeniably present warmth? The car was filled with a dead silence, broken only by her soft, suppressed sobs. I looked at her bowed head, her trembling shoulders, the way her fingers were clamped onto my sleeve as if it were a lifeline. And on some dark, desperate impulse, I lifted my hand and stiffly patted her on the back. That simple gesture made her whole body jolt. She looked up, her eyes wide and glistening with tears, but shining with a disbelieving, radiant joy. "Leo, let's just go," I said, avoiding her intense gaze, my voice hoarse. "It's getting late." I hadn't given her an answer, but I knew, in that moment, that some fundamental defense inside me, worn down by loneliness and trauma, had finally cracked under the weight of her desperate, fragile confession. She didn't press further. She just nodded obediently and started the car. But for the entire drive, the reflection in the window showed a small, irrepressible smile playing on her lips. A smile of satisfaction, of possession, like a predator that had finally cornered its long-desired prey. And I, the prey who had just escaped one trap, was now walking willingly into another, one that felt infinitely more confining. I knew it was dangerous, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. 5 after that night, my relationship with Maya settled into a strange and precarious balance. I hadn't accepted her, but I hadn't definitively rejected her either. She, in turn, didn't seem to be in a rush for an answer. She simply began to permeate every corner of my life in a way that felt both more natural and more invasive than ever before. She'd text me before I left work to ask what I wanted for dinner. She'd fold the clothes I left strewn around my room and organize them by color. She even remembered my parents' birthdays and had gifts ready before I did. It was all done with a suffocating thoughtfulness. I felt like a marionette, passively accepting her care. A voice in the back of my head was screaming that something was deeply wrong, but my broken spirit craved the comfort, the feeling of being meticulously looked after. At least it helped me forget the agony of Chloe's betrayal. That weekend, I had to swing by Maya's apartment to pick up a document I'd left there. She was out grocery shopping, but told me she'd left a key under the doormat. I let myself in, greeted by the familiar, faintly sweet scent that always clung to her. I went straight to her home office and found the document on her desk. As I turned to leave, my elbow bumped an old, worn-out photo album perched on the edge of a bookshelf. It fell with a soft thud, spilling its contents across the floor. I sighed and crouched down to pick them up. Most of them were pictures of us as kids, in diapers, with missing teeth, wearing matching summer camp t-shirts. Seeing them brought a complicated warmth to my chest. But then my hands froze. Scattered among the childhood photos were others. Many others. Photos that were clearly taken without my knowledge. There I was sweating on the basketball court, asleep in a corner of the university library, walking with Chloe on campus, a smile on my face, oblivious. There was even one from my college graduation, me in my cap and gown with my parents, my eyes red from emotion. Dozens of them, spanning years from high school through college and into my first job. All taken from a distance, the quality not perfect, but my face was always in clear focus. An icy dread snaked its way up my spine. This wasn't nostalgia. This was surveillance. A pathological collection. My hands started to shake. I frantically pulled the other albums off the shelf and tore them open. They were all the same, laced with these secret, candid photos. Why? Why would she do this? My eyes locked onto a small, locked drawer in her desk. A wild, terrible thought seized me. With trembling fingers, I keyed my own birthday. Click! The lock sprang open. My heart stopped. Inside, there were no valuables. Just several thick, dated notebooks and a stack of printed pages held together with a binder clip. I picked up the top notebook and flipped it open to a random page. October 12th. Sunny. Leo twisted his ankle at the game today. It hurt me to see him in pain. That Chloe girl just handed him a bottle of water and walked away. She doesn't deserve him. If it were me, I would have carried him to the infirmary. I would have stayed with him until he was better. November 3, RD. Rain. Heard Leo telling Jake he thinks the girl from his English class is cute. I hate her. What's so cute about her? Her smile is so fake. The only person Leo should think is cute is me. The diary chronicled my life in obsessive detail, filled with her delusional fantasies and a venomous jealousy toward every other woman who came near me. Fighting back a wave of nausea, I picked up the stack of printed pages. One glance, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. They were printouts of my old chat logs with Chloe from back when we used AOL Instant Messenger. Sweet, stupid, intimate conversations I had completely forgotten. But something was wrong. In several key arguments, the tone of my messages seemed off. My words were harsher, more irrational than I remembered. I racked my brain, a foggy memory surfacing. That's not how it went. I frantically flipped through the pages until I found the log from the first major fight Chloe and I ever had. At the time, she had been spending a lot of time with some guy from student government for a project. I'd been jealous, but we had talked it out and moved past it. But on this printout, the conversation had been carefully doctored. My messages were altered to sound accusatory and paranoid. Chloe's detailed explanations were deleted, leaving only a few short, clipped replies that made her look guilty and dismissive. The entire exchange was twisted to look like I was flying off the handle for no reason, and she was tacitly admitting to something shady. That misunderstanding, the one that had nearly broken us up, it had been manufactured, and it wasn't just that one time. My hand shook as I scanned the rest of the pages, finding more edits, more deletions. It was like an invisible hand had been working for years, patiently, methodically, creating tiny cracks in our relationship. I always thought my relationship with Chloe had just buckled under the weight of reality and her own ambition. But now I knew. For years, a pair of eyes had been watching me from the shadows. A pair of hands had been secretly, maliciously pulling the strings. The person I thought was my safe harbor, my oldest friend, was the architect of my heartbreak, the saboteur who had set me on the path to this devastating betrayal. Rage, terror, and the sheer mind-bending absurdity of it all crashed over me. Whatever gratitude or fragile affection I had felt for Maya curdled into a bone-deep, horrified loathing. Click! The sound of a key turning in the front door lock. Maya walked in, humming a little tune, a bag of groceries in her hand. Her song died in her throat when she saw the photos scattered on the floor, the printed pages clutched in my trembling hands. The smile on her face froze, and the grocery bag slipped from her grasp, apples and onions rolling across the floor. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, her face cast in shadow. There was no panic, no tearful apology. She just looked at me for a few seconds, and then, with something that sounded like relief, she sighed. You found out. She reached behind her, and with a soft but decisive snap, she turned the deadbolt, locking us in. She took a step toward me, her voice terrifyingly calm, laced with a twisted tenderness. But Leo, now that you know, is it too late? Do you really think, she whispered, you can leave? Do you really think you can leave? Maya's words, paired with the sharp click of the deadbolt, were like an ice pick to the ears. Every hair on my body stood on end. Fear coiled around my heart, but it was eclipsed by a volcanic surge of rage and the sickening feeling of being utterly duped. Maya, you're a fucking psychopath. I scrambled to my feet, my voice shaking with a potent mix of fury and terror. I brandished the printed pages at her, wanting nothing more than to throw them in her face. This was you? All of it? You've been sabotaging me for years. She looked at me without a shred of guilt. Her expression was one of unnerving calm, as if a great weight had been lifted now that her true self was revealed. There was even a flicker of twisted satisfaction in her eyes. "Yes, I did it all," she admitted without hesitation, taking another step closer. "I deleted those messages because I couldn't stand to see you being fooled by that vapid, superficial girl. She never deserved you. All she ever saw was a handsome face and a promising career. She never understood the real you." "Shut up." I was shaking uncontrollably. "You don't get to decide that for me. You don't get to play God with my life." "Because I love you," she shrieked, her voice suddenly raw and piercing. Her eyes were bloodshot, swimming with a terrifying, obsessive light that threatened to swallow me whole. "I'm the only one in the world who truly loves you. I'm the only one who gets you. I cleared away all the obstacles for you. I waited for you to finally see me. I waited for years. Why can't you understand?" She advanced on me as she spoke. I backed away instinctively until my spine hit the cold, hard wall. There was nowhere left to run. "Don't provoke her." A rational corner of my brain screamed at me. She was clearly unhinged. Antagonizing her would only make things worse. I glanced at the window. The security bars looked thick and formidable, confirming that her words weren't an empty threat. Think. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the fruit bowl on a coffee table and the small, sharp paring knife lying next to it. Survival instinct took over. The moment she reached for me, I dodged to the side, lunging for the coffee table and snatching the knife. But I didn't point it at her. I spun around and pressed the cold, sharp tip against my own throat. The metallic sting sent a jolt through my system. "Stay back," I yelled, my voice cracking under the strain. I locked eyes with her. "Let me go, or the only thing you'll have left is a corpse." It was a gamble. I was betting that her love for me, however twisted, was real. I was betting that the one thing she couldn't handle was losing me for good. Maya froze. The manic, obsessive fire in her eyes was instantly extinguished, replaced by a pure, gut-wrenching terror. Her face went deathly pale, her lips trembled, and her gaze was fixed on the glint of steel in my neck. "No, Leo, don't. Put the knife down. Please," she screamed, her voice shrill with genuine panic. Tears streamed down her face. "I'll let you go. I'll let you go right now. Just don't do anything stupid." She was terrified. She was broken. There was no victory in it, only the cold, draining exhaustion of a near miss. But I didn't lower the knife. Keeping it pressed firmly against my skin, I began to inch my way toward the door. "Unlock it," I commanded, my voice tight. Looking like a ghost, she fumbled for the deadbolt, her hands shaking so badly it took her a few tries to turn it. The sliver of open doorway was my path to freedom. The second it was open, I shoved past her and bolted, sprinting down the hallway like my life depended on it. The cool air of the stairwell filled my burning lungs as I took the steps two at a time, not daring to look back, feeling as though a monster was breathing down my neck. I didn't stop running until I hit a busy street, until I was surrounded by the noise and anonymity of the crowd. I finally bent over, hands on my knees, gasping for air, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was safe. For now. My phone in my pocket began to vibrate violently. Maya's name flashed on the screen over and over. I hit the power button, and the world went blessedly silent. But the feeling of being hunted didn't disappear. I instinctively reached into my jacket pocket for a cigarette, for something to calm my shredded nerves. My fingers brushed against a small, hard object that didn't belong. I pulled it out and stared at it in the palm of my hand. It was a tiny black square, smaller than a thumbnail, with a pinprick of red light blinking almost imperceptibly on its surface. A GPS tracker. When did she put it there? In the car? At my parents' house? Or had it been there for weeks? A cold deeper and more terrifying than anything I'd felt before washed over me. I thought I had escaped, but I had never been free at all. 7. Like a cornered animal, I ran. I crushed the GPS tracker under my heel, snapped my SIM card in half, and used the last of my cash to check into a grimy motel off the interstate, the kind that didn't ask for ID. The room was cramped and smelled of mildew, the walls stained and peeling, but for now, it was a sanctuary. Outside the window, unfamiliar cars passed on an unfamiliar street. I drew the curtains, collapsed onto the rock-hard mattress, and curled into a ball, my heart still pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Maya's face kept flashing in my mind, the obsessive madness in her eyes, and the way it had shattered into pure terror the moment I held that knife to my own throat. Did I hate her? Yes. She had played me like a puppet, systematically destroying my ability to trust, to love. Was I afraid of her? Terrified. The feeling of her invisible net closing in around me was a suffocating, waking nightmare. But deep beneath the hatred and the fear, there was a sliver of something else, something I was ashamed to even acknowledge. A flicker of doubt. The panic in her voice when she begged me not to hurt myself. That was real. How much does someone have to care about you to react like that? No, Leo, stop it. I slapped myself hard. That's not care. That's sickness. That's obsession. She's a monster. I needed help. Real help. From someone I could trust completely. Someone who had the skills to help me disappear. Jake, my best friend from college. A brilliant programmer, quiet and dependable. He was the guy I always went to with computer problems, the one who could find anything online. We were as close as brothers, and he was one of the few people who knew the complicated history between me, Chloe, and Maya. Most importantly, he and Maya barely knew each other. He had to be safe. Using the motel's payphone, I carefully dialed his number. Hello. Jake's familiar voice answered. Jake, it's me, Leo. I said, my own voice a low, raspy whisper. Leo? Why are you calling from this number? What's wrong? He could tell immediately that something was off. I'm in serious trouble. Can't talk about it on the phone. I need your help. We need to meet somewhere totally secure. There was a pause on the other end. Okay. Jake's voice was steady, reassuring. Come to my studio. You know the address. 8 o'clock tonight. I'll make sure no one else is there. Thanks, man. I owe you one. A wave of relief washed over me. So strong it almost brought me to my knees. In this hell, at least I had one person I could count on. At 7:50 p.m., I pulled the brim of my baseball cap low and took a winding, paranoid route through back alleys, finally arriving at the old industrial building that housed Jake's studio. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. The door opened. It was Jake, but he didn't usher me in with his usual friendly grin. He just stood there, his eyes a swirling mess of guilt and fear. He stepped aside, revealing the scene behind him. And in that instant, my blood ran cold. Sitting in Jake's oversized ergonomic desk chair, as if she owned the place, was Maya. She was dressed in a simple, elegant sundress, holding a steaming mug of coffee. She looked up at me, my stunned and horrified reflection captured in her dark eyes, and offered a soft, pitying, and utterly terrifying smile. Oh, Leo, you never learn, do you? She set the mug down, her voice a gentle sigh. You really thought I could keep such close tabs on you, that I could so easily edit those old AM conversations from years ago, without a little help from a friend on the inside. My head snapped toward Jake. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor, his fists clenched at his sides, his shoulders slumped in defeat. My trust, my last remaining anchor in this nightmare, shattered into a million pieces. My best friend, my last hope, had been her accomplice all along. Another piece in the intricate, inescapable web she had woven around me. I remembered, vaguely, that Jake had asked Maya out once in college. She turned him down flat. Had she been manipulating him ever since? Blackmailing him? Using me as leverage? A tidal wave of pure despair crashed over me. So powerful, I had to lean against the doorframe to keep from collapsing. Why? Why me? I whispered, the words ragged and hopeless. Maya rose from the chair and glided toward me, ignoring Jake as if he were a piece of furniture. She reached out and gently traced a line along my jaw, her fingertips cool against my cold skin. Her touch was as reverent as if she were handling a priceless, fragile artifact. Because she whispered, her gaze intense, fanatical, from the day you were 8 years old, and you gave me your only lollipop after the other kids pushed me down. Her eyes bored into mine, reflecting my own pale, terrified face. You belong to me. Her voice was impossibly soft, yet carried the weight of an unbreakable, twisted vow. Your kindness, your light. It was only ever meant to shine on me. No one else was ever worthy. I was back in the apartment. Chloe's apartment. Our apartment. The irony was suffocating. The place that had been the epicenter of my pain was now the only safe zone Maya would allow me to inhabit. In her warped reality, I suppose being surrounded by the ghosts of my failed relationship only served to reinforce her position as the one who would never leave. She followed me inside, moving with the easy familiarity of someone coming home. She was carrying groceries, cheerfully announcing she was going to make me a proper welcome home dinner. We sat at opposite ends of the dining table, a few perfectly cooked dishes laid out between us. The silence was heavy, charged with the oppressive calm before a hurricane. She placed a piece of her special honey-glazed barbecue rib on my plate, a dish I'd once casually mentioned was my favorite. "Eat. You've lost weight." Her tone was placid, but her eyes were an invisible cage, trapping me. I looked at her, this girl I'd known my whole life, who now felt more alien than a stranger. "Jake." I forced the word out, my throat tight. "What did you do to him?" Her chopsticks paused midair. She glanced up, her expression as casual as if discussing the weather. "Nothing much. He just borrowed some money from his company a while back, got in over his head. I helped him cover his tracks. Of course, I still have the original transaction records. Just for safekeeping." A chill went through me. "And your parents," she continued, nonchalantly spooning some soup into my bowl. "They just adore me. When I stopped by last week, your mom said she wishes I was her daughter-in-law." She smiled, a smug, triumphant little smile. "They're not getting any younger. Their health isn't the best. I think it's better we take things slow, don't you? We wouldn't want to give them a shock." She was threatening my parents. The realization felt like a venomous snake coiling around my heart. As for Chloe, she dabbed her mouth with a napkin, her movements refined, her words laced with ice. "She and that Chadwick Prescott are completely finished. His family found out she was juggling a few other men on the side. Much juicier stuff than what you sent them, by the way. All I did was give things a little nudge. Make sure her reputation was ruined beyond repair." She looked at me, her eyes shining with a frightening, diamond-hard brilliance. "You see, Leo, I'm always cleaning up your messes. Anyone who hurts you, anyone who isn't worthy of you, I will make them pay." I stared at her, my body cold with a horror that went beyond fear. This wasn't love. This was a disease, a crusade of possession and destruction. "What do you want from me, Maya?" My voice was a dry whisper, trembling with a rage I couldn't release. She set her napkin down and rose from her chair, walking around the table until she stood before me. She leaned down, cupping my face in her hands, forcing me to meet her gaze. Her fingertips were cold, but her eyes were scorching, burning with an undisguised, fanatical love and obsession. "I want you to love me back, willingly, the way I love you." Her thumb traced the line of my bottom lip, a gesture of terrifying tenderness. "And if you can't," she leaned in close, her warm breath ghosting against my ear. Her voice dropped to a whisper, each word a poison dart. "Then I'll just take you as you are. You can stay by my side forever. You can even hate me. It doesn't matter. You're never leaving me again." The moment her words faded into the tense silence, bang, 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 a frantic, desperate pounding on the front door. It was followed by a familiar, hated voice, now choked with sobs and raw with panic. "Leo, Leo, open the door. I know you're in there." It was Maya. It was all her. She played us. She played everyone. It was Chloe. Maya's hands tightened on my face, her nails digging into my skin. The color drained from her face, her expression hardening into a mask of pure, murderous fury. She slowly straightened up, looking down at me. A dangerous, chillingly cold smile twisted her lips. "You see," she murmured, her voice a ghost of a sound, yet crackling with madness. "There's always someone who doesn't know when to leave us alone." Maya yanked the door open. Chloe stood on the other side, a wreck. Her hair was a mess. Her expensive makeup was streaked with tears, and her eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and rage. The sight of Maya made her stumble back, but her desperation quickly overrode her fear. "You! It was you, Maya!" she shrieked, her voice ragged, pointing a trembling finger. "You faked the chat logs to drive us apart. You fed that story about my ex to Chad's family. You ruined my life. You're psycho. A monster." Chloe tried to push her way inside, a desperate lunge for what she must have seen as her only ally. But Maya stood her ground, an immovable, venomous sentinel guarding her territory. Her expression was one of cold, condescending contempt. "Me, a psycho," she said with a soft, chilling laugh that cut through Chloe's hysterics like glass. "No, Chloe, you're just greedy and stupid." Maya took a single step forward, forcing Chloe back. "I gave you a chance." Maya's voice was terrifyingly calm. "If you had just been happy with Leo, if you had actually been good to him, I might have kept my feelings buried forever. I would have been content just to watch over him." Her eyes narrowed, becoming sharp and lethal, brimming with years of repressed jealousy and rage. "But you had to betray him. For money, for status, for that piece of trash. You took something I considered sacred and used it as a stepping stone." With every word, the color drained further from Chloe's face. She began to tremble violently. "Did you really think," Maya finished, a cruel smile playing on her lips, "that I would let you get away with that?" Chloe was broken. She had no defense. All her anger and self-pity seemed pathetic and hollow in the face of Maya's twisted, righteous fury. She just stood there, swaying, unable to form another word. "And you," Maya spun around, her gaze landing on me like a scalpel. It was filled with anger, disappointment, and a deep, bottomless well of sorrow. "Now, what do you see? Do you see what your precious dream girl really is? She never loved you. She only ever loved herself." Her chest heaved with ragged breaths. And finally, the tears she'd been holding back began to fall, hot and furious. "I'm the one. I'm the only one in this world who truly loves you. Even if I had to cheat, even if you hate me for the rest of your life, I had to save you from them. I had to get you back." That's when I saw it. The hand she had kept hidden behind her back was clenched around something. The small, sharp paring knife from the kitchen. Its tip caught the dim hallway light, glinting with cold promise. Her eyes were locked on the catatonic Chloe, and in them, I saw a signal of complete and utter loss of control. A point of no return. I couldn't wait another second. As Chloe stared in horror, just as Maya was about to be consumed by her madness, I didn't push her. I didn't try to grab the knife. I lunged forward and wrapped my arms around her from behind, holding on with all the strength I had left. My arms circled her waist, my chest pressed against her violently trembling back. Maya's entire body went rigid, as if she'd been struck by lightning. The paring knife slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. "It's enough, Maya." My voice was a hoarse, exhausted rasp against her neck, but it was filled with a sense of finality that surprised even me. "Let her go." I felt her body slowly, incrementally relax in my arms, the frantic tremors subsiding. The tension seemed to drain out of her, leaving her limp against me. She gasped a single, broken syllable. "So tired." Those two words stole the last of her fight. She didn't even glance at Chloe again, as if the woman who had provoked this storm had simply ceased to exist. Chloe, for her part, was stunned into silence by the bizarre scene unfolding before her. She stared at us, locked in our strange embrace, her face a mask of utter bewilderment. "Get out," Maya said, her voice flat and cold, directed at the empty space in front of her. The word was a whip that snapped Chloe out of her trance. She flinched, then scrambled away, her heels clacking frantically down the stairs until the sound faded into nothing. The world was finally completely quiet. Just the two of us, standing in the doorway of the trash department. The air still smelled of conflict. The small, cold knife lay on the floor between us. Slowly, Maya turned in my arms to face me. She looked up, her large eyes still shimmering with tears, her long lashes clumped together. They were filled with uncertainty, with a cautious, fragile hope, like a child who had done something terrible and was terrified that their forgiveness was just a dream. "Leo, you just..." Her voice was a feather-light whisper, trembling uncontrollably. I didn't answer. There were no words. I looked down at her face, this impossible collage of madness and vulnerability, of obsession and devotion. In that moment, all the anger, the fear, the struggle, it all seemed to meld away into irrelevance. I lowered my head, and with a sense of grim finality, I kissed her. This wasn't a kiss of tentative affection. It was desperate. It was the taste of surrender, of two people choosing to fall into the abyss together. It was brutal and accepting, a final acknowledgement of the broken, twisted souls we both were. It was bitter, but somewhere in the press of our lips, I could taste something dark, addictive, and tragically sweet. Maya's eyes flew open in disbelief. Then, with a sound that was half sob, half sigh, she closed them, her arms snaking around my neck, pulling me closer with a force that felt like she was trying to merge our bodies into one as she returned the kiss with a fiery, desperate passion. Outside, the city lights blinked on, their colors washing over our two figures, hopelessly entangled in the wreckage. We were like the last two survivors at the end of the world, clinging to each other on a pile of rubble. I knew I was lost. I had given up fighting, and in its place, I had chosen to drown, to make my home in the arms of this beautiful, poisonous vine that had grown only for me. Maya and I got married. The wedding was small, just close family and a few select friends who knew the whole story. Jake was there. He raised his glass to me from across the room, his expression a complicated mix of emotions that finally settled on a sad, apologetic smile. I gave him a slight nod in return, a silent acceptance of an apology that was both too late and no longer mattered. As I placed the ring on Maya's finger, she cried. Not tears of joy, but the heaving, uncontrollable sobs of a lost child who had finally found her way home. I reached up to wipe the tears from her cheeks, and as my fingers brushed her warm skin, a strange sense of peace settled over me. I knew, from the moment I had chosen to embrace her in that chaotic doorway, that my life had been irrevocably set on a new course, a path overgrown with thorns, but also blooming with the exotic, hothouse flowers of her obsession. I know she's not well. Her love is a silken cord that tightens around my neck, a slow-acting poison in my veins, delivered with suffocating tenderness and absolute control. But I also know, better than anyone, that this world is a cold, lonely place. Chloe's love was transactional. My coworkers' smiles were masks for their own ambition. Even my parents' affection came filtered through a generational gap they could never quite cross. Only Maya's love was absolute. It was a love that could defy morality, rewrite history, and lay traps across the entire world, all for the singular purpose of keeping me locked within her sight, within her life. Is that kind of love terrifying? Yes, but it is also undeniably real. It burns with a heat that cannot be faked. It is a warped mirror, reflecting a dark desire deep within me that I never wanted to admit. The need to be wanted, to be treasured so completely and obsessively that someone would be willing to burn down the world for me. So I stopped fighting. I chose to live within the beautiful, toxic embrace of the vine that had grown just for me. In her world, at least, I was a god, singular, irreplaceable, and worthy of total, destructive devotion. Married life was surprisingly peaceful. Sweet even, she reigned in her most extreme tendencies. No more GPS trackers, no more surprise visits. She transformed into a normal, affectionate wife. She would try, and often fail, to cook my favorite dishes. She would leave a light on for me when I worked late. She would curl up against me on the couch while we watched mindless television. Then, one afternoon, I came home early from work. I pushed open the door to her office and saw her sitting on the floor, her back to me. She was carefully placing a few small items into that familiar locked drawer, the one that had once held all her dark secrets. She jumped when she heard me, whipping her head around. For a split second, before she could compose herself, I saw the look on her face. It was an expression of intense, almost religious devotion. The same focus she must have had when she was altering our chat logs. The same madness she'd held along with that paring knife. The next instant, it was gone, replaced by a bright, cloudless smile. "Leo, you're home." She sprang up and threw herself into my arms, nuzzling her face into my chest like a happy kitten. I could smell the familiar sweet scent of her hair. I wrapped my arms around her automatically. "What are you up to?" I asked, my voice casual, my eyes drifting to the now-closed drawer. Her body tensed for a fraction of a second. Then she looked up at me, her smile as sweet as ever, her eyes clear. "Oh, just organizing some old things." She paused, then added, Things that remind me of you. I can never throw them away. I looked down at her and said nothing. I knew what was in the drawer now. It wasn't chat logs or stalker photos anymore. It was probably a doodle I'd made on a napkin, a pair of movie ticket stubs, maybe even a cigarette, but she'd secretly salvaged from an ashtray. A new collection of relics. New proof of her ownership. That locked drawer, her secret world, would always exist. It contained the very essence of her love for me. The inescapable obsession that formed the fragile, twisted foundation of our life together. And I had thrown away the key, willingly,